because I refuse to say anything to you because you haven't done your homework.
Up your tricks again. You said. Get out of here, will you? Rocky, can you explain?
Blind man's bluff. Joey, you're supposed to be blind. Joey, you're supposed to be blind, mate.
You owe this man $40,000. Right.
Hey! Oh, shit!
You, please! What are you getting back? You're running over.
Hello, I'm Paul Barry. Welcome to Media Watch, where I'm sad to say we're bidding farewell to one of our oldest friends, because after almost 25 years on air, Seven has axed Today Tonight in Adelaide and Perth and replaced the programme, as of this week, with an extra half hour of news.
We certainly have. It certainly is a sad day. Thank you very much for your kind words. It's really hard to believe that the time has come, folks, tonight for our final show.
25 staff in Adelaide and Perth will lose their jobs, which will doubtless save a few $1 million for the network. And the audience will have to wave goodbye to stories like this ripper on fat-blasting undies, which have kept Media Watch in business for years.
You're actually wearing science.
The biocrystals, which melts down the cellulite, are inserted in the yarn. So it will work during the time that they are wearing it.
It'll also be goodbye to dubious world exclusives, like this one on Australia's most notorious outback murder.
I am 100% sure that Peter Falconio's body is down the bottom of the well, and I'm sure we will find the silver revolver that shot him in the back of the head.
And we'll also miss moments like this from TT in Perth earlier this year.
Hello, it is very good to have you with us on this Monday evening. Hang on, I'm over here. We're going to begin tonight with the squatters. I'll move. Cameras, stay still. I'll move. Here we go. We're going to bring... OK. We're going to begin tonight with the squatters.
But while TT has provided Media Watch with plenty of amusement over the years, it also did its share of decent investigative reporting, including a series of excellent stories on the troubled mortgage lender Angus Securities.
If I could get my money out, I'd get the whole lot out tomorrow.
Can you afford to lose that money?
No, definitely not. No way in the world.
Today Tonight's state-based stories have also been a hit with local audiences. Since March 2001, it has won its time slot in Adelaide every week. And its demise, says the programme's founding EP Graham Archer, is a disaster.
There will be no local current affairs in this state, and this to me is a tragedy.
So why did Seven axe the programme, despite its local ratings dominance? Short answer, money. As Seven News director Craig McPherson told TV Tonight,
the analysis that we've done in these cold, hard economic times show that we would still get that audience for less money.
And that verdict is backed up by Seven's former head of news, Peter Meakin, now at 10, who told Media Watch,
TT may have been winning its slot, but Seven does worse at 6:30 in Adelaide and Perth than it does in markets where it runs a one-hour news.
Sadly, the programme's closure means that veteran reporters like Perth's Mark Gibson will no longer have a job. Made redundant last week after 19 years with Seven, he told Media Watch proudly,
we held a mirror up to the Perth community for 25 years, and we leave with our heads held high. It's the end of local current affairs, and that's a sad day, not just for those of us who have lost our jobs, but for the people of WA who came to us when no one else would listen. We are storytellers, and many, many stories will now go untold.
But TT is not the only show that Seven management has axed, because, in a shocking week for audience and staff, a host of lifestyle and leisure programmes have also been binned, including Queensland's The Great Day Out.
It's very serene.
Queensland Weekender. And Creek to Coast.
Liz has the need for speed.
And as Brisbane's Courier Mail reported, locals were not happy.
Readers rage over Channel 7's decision to axe lifestyle programs for franchise reality trash.
Also gone is Sydney Weekender, which has notched up a quarter of a century on air with Mike Whitney at the helm. And other states have also been hit, with SA Weekender and The Great Weekend also canned. Throw in Seven's flagship current affairs show Sunday Night, axed in October, and you can see how ruthless the network has been in cutting costs. The net result, Seven will now kick off 2020 with no current affairs show and no immediate plans or ideas to fill the void. As McPherson told TV Tonight,
I think that's been proven, that the audiences are now looking for something else. I don't think the way traditionally it's been done is resonating anymore.
But his predecessor, Peter Meakin, is sceptical about that explanation, especially in relation to Sunday Night, telling Media Watch,
I am absolutely certain that cost-cutting was a bigger factor than the viability of current affairs.
What's driving these cuts is the brutal arithmetic of cost per viewer as TV audiences shrink and revenues fall. Seven's priority is now to find a new reality TV blockbuster for 2020 and/or reboot Big Brother. Meanwhile, the good news is that 10 is taking a different view and adding an extra half hour of local news in all its markets for the next 2 months to see if it can steal some of Seven's audience. If it can, I guess they'll make it permanent. But now to the Pacific, where China's growing influence in the region is making journalists' jobs suddenly much harder, as 60 Minutes reporter Liam Bartlett discovered on a recent visit to Kiribati.
We're being followed by a government car. Now, whether that's Kiribati government or whether that's somebody from the government operating under Chinese instruction, who knows? But it's a very, very strange thing to happen in a place like this.
The Solomon Islands and Kiribati have recently switched allegiance from Taiwan to China, and 60 Minutes wanted to find out whether that could be a threat to Australia.
The Chinese are coming in with soft power and lots of cash to buy out local officials to gain access to ports and airfields and resources that give them a controlling monopoly in the islands and thus give them control over this vital sea lane.
But Bartlett and his team were not in Kiribati long enough to find out the answers.
On arrival at our hotel, we're immediately placed under house arrest and threatened with imprisonment.
If you keep arguing with me, my other instruction is to transfer you to a cell. We have no right in the country.
Bartlett and his 60 Minutes crew were deported the next day, ostensibly because they had no visa, or as Bartlett described it,
a draconian film permit that journalists working in the region say is almost never granted and gives the government the right to completely censor any news reports.
But Bartlett is not the only reporter to be banned from a Pacific nation for asking too many questions. Dan McGarry is the media director of the Vanuatu Daily Post. Originally from Canada, he's married to a Vanuatu citizen and has lived in the country for 16 years. But last month his work visa was revoked, and after leaving Vanuatu to attend a forum, ironically on media freedom in the Pacific, he's been barred from returning. So, why is that? McGarry reckons it's because he broke this story back in July.
Under a veil of secrecy, China has convinced Vanuatu to enforce Chinese law within its own borders. 6 Chinese nationals were arrested, detained without charge on the premises of a Chinese company with numerous large government contracts. Without access to the Vanuatu courts, they were escorted out of Vanuatu with Chinese police holding one arm and Vanuatu police holding the other.
It's worth remembering that months of unrest in Hong Kong were sparked by suggestions that China might be allowed to do the same there. And McGarry's story pointed to the parallels.
This is sure to be a worrying development for political or religious dissidents, or indeed anyone who raises the ire of authorities in Beijing.
And as McGarry told the ABC last month, the Vanuatu government made it clear it was seriously angered by the story.
The Prime Minister summoned me. He told me in no uncertain terms that he was disappointed with my reporting. He said I was being too negative. He said, if you don't like it here, you can go home.
But it's not just Kiribati and Vanuatu cracking down. Back in April, 3 New Zealand journalists were arrested in Fiji while investigating a Chinese developer for allegedly violating environmental regulations on Malolo Island. Melanie Reid, one of those arrested, told the New Zealand Herald,
"The Pacific is awash with Chinese money and we are taking on a Chinese development."
In the end, no charges were laid and the arrests were condemned by Fiji's Prime Minister. But reporters say intimidation of journalists across the region is increasing. Last year, Scott Wide was briefly suspended from PNG's MTV after he broadcast a story criticising the government's purchase of a fleet of Maseratis for the APEC summit. He told the ABC Pacific governments are taking lessons from China in dealing with their critics.
Clampdowns on the media, intimidating. I'm not saying China's directly telling them to do it, but people watch, people learn.
And Dan McGarry agrees the Pacific regimes may be following China's lead in this respect.
I have no evidence whatsoever that the government of China tried to influence the government of Vanuatu in any way, shape or form regarding my residence. What I do see, however, is a tendency among Pacific leaders across the region to emulate the kind of behaviour that they're seeing elsewhere.
For now, McGarry is still in Australia and still trying to get back home to Vanuatu, to his wife, his children and his job. If he succeeds, he says he won't be intimidated and will continue to report what's happening without fear or favour.
If I walk away and leave and watch the country slide away from democracy, how am I going to sleep at night? How are my kids going to sleep at night? How could I look them in the eye?
We wish him luck. But now to News Corp and its climate change reporting, and a blistering attack on this op-ed in The Australian, which we had a swipe at last week.
Let's not pollute mines with carbon fears.
In which geologist Ian Plimer assured readers,
there are no carbon emissions. If there were, we could not see because most carbon is black.
The website Climate Feedback asked 10 climate scientists in Australia, Britain, the US and Germany to review the Plimer piece, and we reckon they scored it around 1 out of 10. In their words,
a majority of reviewers tagged the article as biased,
flawed reasoning,
inaccurate,
misleading.
And some of those scientists did not hold back. Professor Katrin Meissner from the University of New South Wales concluded,
virtually every single scientific statement in this article is either misleading or downright wrong. The Australian should be ashamed of itself. What next? An opinion piece on the flat earth theory?
Willem Heiskamp from the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research was almost as blunt, describing Plimer's piece as
an absurd collection of non sequiturs, distortions and outright falsehoods that have been thoroughly debunked over the past decade.
And Twyla Moon from the University of Colorado said,
it is appalling that such a blatantly false article can be published in any credible news outlet today.
The Climate Feedback Review was accompanied by a demand to Rupert Murdoch and The Australian to correct the record, but the paper has not yet done so or bothered to respond. What it did do, however, to our great surprise, was run this story from environment editor Graham Lloyd on the front page.
Planet cascades towards hothouse.
This highlighted new warnings from climate scientists that the Earth may have reached a tipping point. Now, it's rare for Lloyd, whom we've tagged several times on Media Watch, to report such alarming stories straight. In the past, he's more often been busy claiming the barrier reef is fine or worrying about a coming mini ice age many times over. We hope that last week's front page is a sign that he and The Australian have at last decided to report the science seriously. But it's worth noting that the paper's readers did not like it. The vast majority of the 1,349 and counting comments on Lloyd's story were angry or negative, with comments like,
why is this garbage in The Australian? Get it out.
Is this really science?
What a load of alarmist drivel.
By contrast, the 1,763 comments on the Plimer article were almost universally positive, with reactions like this.
Excellent article. Rock solid common sense. Will we wake up to this CO2 scam before it's too late?
Great article, Ian. Excellent. All the key evidence and critical and logical arguments are now laid out.
So, no prizes for guessing why The Australian serves up the denialist line. In the face of criticism from Climate Feedback, Ian Plimer told us he stands by his piece, which he says is based on evidence and has huge support from geologists.
The science that I used to underpin my piece has been long known.
And The Australian told us
Plimer has written extensively on this issue, and his voice is one of many which are important in the mix.
And in today's paper, former Editor-in-Chief Chris Mitchell accused the ABC, including Media Watch, of being the, quote, real climate deniers. Yes, really. And finally tonight to the big dry and the dusty pastures of central Queensland with this report from 7 News.
Drovers Karen Mason and Royce Bridges have spent 11 months in the long paddock, walking 3,000 kilometres in search of feed.
And after so long in the saddle, drover Royce wasn't going to cop any pesky demands from journalists, as reporter Rachel Baxter revealed when she posted her behind-the-scenes drover wrangling to Twitter.
Royce, tell us what you guys are doing here today.
Yeah, we're just coming across. We'll draft some off.
Oh, sorry. Can we just get the ciggy out of your mouth? Just they might they might get at me. That's all. Sorry, mate.
Mate, I smoke. If they don't like it, stuff them.
Okay.
Yeah, stuff them. Lesson learned: drought-hit farmers don't care about what your newsroom boss thinks. Although the boss does have the power to show you sans ciggy when the news goes to air. And that's all from us tonight. There's more on our website, including a full statement from The Australian. And don't forget, Media Bites on your favourite social media platform every Thursday. But for now, until next week, goodbye.